Hey everyone. Well, the light is kind of bad here. Let's see. I can move it a little bit. How's it going? How are you today? So welcome to the Periscope. I am so excited to have you here, and I'm so excited for this month. I'm doing National Novel Planning Month, so I'm doing lots of. Hi, how are you? I'm doing lots of awesome tips to help you plan your story before National Novel Writing Month starts on November 1st. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm JenniferBlanchard. I'm an author and a story coach. I work with serious emerging novelists who want to save time and cut years off their learning curve so they can write better stories and get published faster. So today I'm going to talk about how to amp up your story idea. And so, there's a lot of ways to do this, but there's one way in particular that is really important for you to have in your story, and that's a concept. So to kind of explain a little bit about what concept is it's really, I like to think of it as that really compelling, just sort of the thing that makes your story really, really interesting and exciting before you introduce a plot and a character. So I like to call concept the gotta read it factor. So it's that thing about your story. Hello, how are you? It's a thing about your story that basically makes someone say, I have to read that. I've got to read that before they even know, what the plot is or who your characters are, anything else about the story. That's what concept is. Now, concept is very hard to understand sometimes, so if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat box, and I'd love to answer them for you as best I can. And, concept is really something that a lot of writers struggle with. So, and the reason is because a lot of times writers will confuse premise, which is really your plot, with your concept. And so to kind of separate the two, I'm doing a Periscope today about concept. I'm doing another one tomorrow about premise. And then going into later in the week on Friday, I'm going to actually do one on concept and premise, giving you examples, even more examples of all of these. So, but today, going with concept, I thought we could just go through a couple examples so you could kind of get a better idea of what concept is. So using some movies, because, movies are easier for most people who have seen them, and it just makes it easier to break down the structure and then kind of explain about the story. So that's why I talk about movies, but stories are stories, whether it's a novel, whether it's a movie. So, okay, so in The Hunger Games, which I'm sure a lot of you have seen, the concept is the games. So, the games itself, this idea that, children are pitted against each other and have to fight for the death, or fight to the death in order to pay back previous things that have happened in history in this, society. Now that is a crazy, crazy concept, right? And it makes the story really interesting. But here's the thing. That's not enough for a story. So right there you have something that's compelling, of course, yeah. Super interesting. No one's really done anything like that before. So immediately upon hearing that concept, you think, wow, I have to read that story, or you want to know more about it. But a concept alone is not enough, which is why you need to bring in premise. And like I said, I'm going to talk more about that tomorrow. But just kind of going into concept. So, thank you for all the hearts. Yeah, and so then the movie Twilight, or, the books, it's the same thing. The same concept in the movie and the books. So, but the Twilight concept is a vampire falls in love with a human girl. Now, that in itself is interesting. Now, of course, today, there's a lot of stories out there about this. But when Twilight came out, it was one of the earlier, first stories that really dove into something like this. So that's what made it so compelling. Now it's not as interesting or unique a concept as it was when Stephanie Meyer did it. But the point being, that's what started the story. So that's the concept of it. And then you add in premise, which is your actual plot. And again, I will go into that tomorrow. Superman, so Superman is a really compelling concept. And the cool thing about concept is that you can use the same concept across several stories. So, a lot of times that's exactly how concept works. So, for example, in The Hunger Games, the concept is the same across all the stories. In Twilight, same concept. A vampire falls in love with a, human girl. Same concept across all the stories. What changes is the premise. That's the plot of the story, which I'll get into tomorrow. Okay, so Superman, here's the concept. An alien child gets sent to Earth and is raised by human parents and grows up to have superhuman powers. Things that other people didn't have. that's compelling. And that is a character as concept. And so, that makes the story interesting before you bring in a plot. And Superman has had, tons of stories out there, movies and comics and all these things. And all of that has been built off of one single concept, which is pretty awesome. And so, if you're doing a series or if you're writing something that you're going to continue on, you're going to want to make sure you have one concept that's strong enough to support the entire series of stories on it. Now, most story concepts are not that compelling, and the reason is because most writers don't realize that they have to have something compelling at the heart of their story before they go into the plot. And so I wanted to share an example from a story that I'm working on and kind of walk you through how I started. Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad you're enjoying them. So I wanted to walk you through how I took the concept that I had in mind for my story and developed it into something a lot more compelling than what I started with. So my new story that I'm going to be writing during National Novel Writing Month this year, I've been planning it for a few months now. And so how I started was I had this dream the funny thing was the dream was about John Mayer, but it was about a girl falling in love with John Mayer and believing that he's her soulmate. And so I woke up and thought, oh, that could be kind of a cool idea for a story. So the original concept was a girl is in love with this celebrity and decides to drop everything, quit her job, and move across the country to try to date him. Now, that is sort of compelling in itself. It's not as lame as some of the concepts that are out there, but it's not that compelling because when I started working with it, it was full of a lot of holes. There was a lot of, questions that I had as far as like, well, why would she just quit her job? What would make her think that this guy would even go for her? How would she find him? Like, all these questions were kind of coming up for me, and it was kind of making it so that I felt like I needed something more. And so I started working on it, developing it a little more. I worked with my story coach to make sure that I had a good concept because, it's important for me as a story coach to have my own story coach. And so working with my story coach, I came up with a new concept, which I tweaked to be, what if you got asked or invited to go on tour with your favorite band? So that's pretty conceptual. It's pretty interesting. Someone might hear that and think, oh, I need to read that story. I need to see, what the story is like. And that concept is sort of similar to the one from the movie, what is it called? Oh, great. I'm never going to remember the name now. It's the one with Kate Hudson, and they go on tour with that band. What is it called? Oh, Almost Famous. Okay, so it's very similar to that. And so I wanted to kind of go further with it. And so I updated it again and kind of worked on it. And so the new concept of it, which the one I'm actually going to be writing, is what if you got invited to go on tour with your favorite band, including the guy who you think is your soulmate? I'm a love story writer. That's what I write. So my concept has to have something, love story related in it. But that made the story a lot more conceptual. Now, again, there's no plot and there's no character really. It's just a general idea and something compelling and interesting about the story. But this is really the heart of my story. And then, I'm going to talk about premise tomorrow, so I'll show you more about how I'm developing a plot for this concept. But the whole idea is you want to think about how can I take my story idea and really amp it up to give it something compelling that doesn't include a plot, doesn't include a character, unless, of course, the character is what's conceptual. Like in the Superman example, the character is what's conceptual. But you want something for your story that's different, that's unique, and that not everyone has done a million times, So, hello from Kazakhstan. How do you pronounce that? Hello. It's so cool to have viewers all over the world. But yeah, so you want to be thinking about how you can take your story idea and amp it up. So let's say you're thinking about writing a story about a girl who meets a guy and falls in love. Okay, pretty lame concept to start with. But that's usually how ideas start, is something will hit you and you'll think, okay, I can turn this into a story. Now the problem is if you take that and just keep going. You don't want to just run with that initial idea. You want to develop it more and really make sure you're bringing something compelling to it. So a guy and a girl falling in love is not really that conceptual. It's been done a million times. But how you do it is what makes it conceptual. What am I talking about? I am talking about concept. So concept is a piece of story planning information that you need to know in order to be able to write something really, really good. And if you want to watch the replay, and it'll be available on Periscope for the next 24 hours. Otherwise, replays of all my Periscopes, and especially for this month, I'm doing a Periscope every day during the week. So I'm doing 20 Periscopes this month, all about different story planning topics that you need to know in order to write a really good story during National Novel Writing Month. The reason I'm doing this is because, well, number one, I'm a story coach. This is what I do. I love it. This is what I spend my life doing and talking about. But also because National Novel Writing Month is totally amazing as a motivational and habit-forming event, but it's really not the best event for coming up with an actual story or ending up with a novel. And so I wanted to do something to help people really get their story ideas figured out, have a story plan so that when they sit down November 1st, they're not just writing 50,000 words of nothing, but they're writing a 50,000 word story. And a story is a very specific thing, which I talked about in my Periscope yesterday when I defined what a story is. So if you want to check out that, you can go to this URL right here, catch.me/inkybites. That's my Twitter handle. And all my replays are on there. And so you can check out all of them and make sure that you stay up to date on all the story planning stuff. Catch.me/inkybites. And like I said, I'm going to be coming back all week doing these different Periscopes. So tomorrow I'm talking about premise, which is plot. And Thursday I'm going to be talking about how to come up with a really good concept for your love story. So, I write love stories, and I know I work with a lot of people who are writing love stories. And so I thought it'd be cool to just do one Periscope completely about love stories. And then Friday I'm going to go concept and premise, give you a lot of examples to kind of illustrate better what I've been talking about all week. So stick with me, stay tuned, and I can't wait to share all that with you. So, like I said, I'll be back tomorrow. And if you want help with your concept, if you're having a hard time coming up with something really compelling for your story, and you want some support on that and get some help to make sure that you're going to have a really strong idea that's going to make your story worth writing and publishing, I would love for you to join me for a free clarity call, and we can talk about how we can amp up your story and make it really awesome. So you can go here to JenniferBlanchard.net/clarity call, and we can talk. So thanks so much for joining me today, and I will catch you tomorrow. And hopefully you will learn some really awesome stuff that's going to help you with your novel that you write this year. So